You are listening to Two Aliens and 11 Roswell Books podcast by Christy and Jess, hosted on Spreaker.com, an original Roswell podcast about the relevance and importance of the companion book series to the TV show Roswell. Hello everyone, welcome back to Two Aliens and 11 Roswell Books podcast. This is episode 3. We are going to talk all about the first book in the Roswell companion series, Loose Ends. This is one of the 2 Problem Child books in the series. So, if you are new to the podcast, I am your host, Christy, and I'm joined here by my host, Jess, also known as the Roswell Book Queen.
Hi, guys. Welcome.
We are ready to dive into this first book. I do want to preface here, if you don't want to hear any spoilers, you don't want to know what happens in the book, this is not an episode to listen to. If you want to read the book for yourself first, we totally understand, and then you can come back and listen to this podcast later. But we're going to give you basically the cliff notes of what happens in Loose Ends, our issues with the book, and we're just going to give you the tea. We're going to spill the tea on everything in this book. So if you don't want to know, don't listen. We understand. It's fine. But we are going to deep dive into this book. Just a reminder, we do have the PDF of this book now, thanks to our friend Deb, who typed it out. So if you want to read it on PDF and you don't want to buy it off eBay or Amazon, we have that option for you. Just email me at roswellvirtualparty@gmail.com or contact us on our socials, and we can get you the link to download this first book and almost every other book in the companion book series. We just have a couple that we are missing and working on getting out there into the world. So, that said, let's start talking about Loose Ends, one of 2 Problem Child books in the series aside from Quarantine, which we will talk all about in a future episode. Before we go any further in this podcast, I just want to preface this by saying you are going to notice some audio issues. Unfortunately, Jess and I did not get to re-record this episode, and we wanted to make sure it would get out to you because it's already a month behind. We are going to hopefully have an improvement in sound in future episodes because Jess and I have both purchased the same headphones and microphone. So I apologize for the unfortunate feedback sound issues you're going to hear in this episode. I have cut out a majority of them, so hopefully it won't be too bad of a listening experience for all of you, and thank you so much for your patience. And here we go into the episode. Back to it. So first of all, why is this a Problem Child book for you, Jess? Let's talk about it. There's a lot of issues here.
There are several issues with this book. My main issue is timeline. I don't know where to put it. And as you know, I have my handy dandy guide, and I put it first because, well, we know that it comes out season 2. We know that it's 2 years after Liz gets shot at the crash downs when it takes place. But they talk about certain things that shouldn't have happened yet. Like there's a line about Future Max, and that shouldn't have happened yet. They talk about the skins. They talk about Whitaker. There's just so many different things. And also, Max and Liz are together in this book. So it can't be after End of the World because obviously they're not after that one. So just the amount of different wording that the author used and different things that they mentioned that didn't fit is what bothers me. Also, there's a few things in here like the way they drink Tabasco sauce. they chug it. And they definitely don't chug it in the series. I've always seen them put a few dollars in, or bake it in a cake, or, you know, eat it on some. They don't chug it. And they chug it in this one.
That was super strange to me.
Very strange. And then Michael calls Maria babe a couple times, which is also weird to me because I've never ever heard that happen ever.
Babe, what?
What? Right? And also, I think the one thing that bothers me the most, besides the timeline issues, is the use of Maria calling the aliens to their face Czechoslovakians. Now, we know darn well that the only time she ever did that was to keep it from Alex, so Alex wouldn't know. But after Alex found out, I don't remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't remember Maria ever using that word again.
No. I remember that was mainly in episode 3 where they started using that term Czechoslovakians. And they did that for, I think, that episode and maybe 1 or 2 other episodes after that. But she never, ever called Max, Michael, or Isabelle or Tess Czechoslovakian to their face.
Only a Liz and Maria thing. Alex didn't even know that. And there are times when she says it and she talks to them using that as if they know what the heck she's talking about, which they wouldn't have, because they never. That it's just kind of like, remember when she would sniff that stuff? Well, she does that a lot in this book too, and all of a sudden she stops sniffing stuff by the second and third season.
Yeah, the I don't know what you call it, the essential oils or whatever, the ones that you can consume, I guess.
Right. So it's things like that that bother me. That's why I call it my problem child. Because where do I put this, and why are they doing strange things that I have not seen for 3 seasons?
Yeah, all of that was so strange. So yeah, the whole time I think is very confusing. But overall, I think it's a good book. We just have some issues with some inconsistencies. Which brings me to this. Jess, you mentioned to me you have a theory about why this book and the show do not coincide together. And I also want to mention here that we think it happened before the end of the world, but that premiered in October of 2000, and this book came out the summer after that episode, which was June 4th, 2001. So what's your theory about that, Jessica?
Well, we all know that this show has a lot of rewrites happen. And I read somewhere that Liz was originally supposed to tell Max about Future Max in an episode. Where that episode landed, I don't know. I never heard that. But my theory is that was supposed to happen, and maybe that's why it's in this book. Like, so the rewriting's happening for the show, but they're not communicating with the authors, or the books are already out. So it's a lot of miscommunication there, and I think that that's why this one might have been a misstep. But also, I want to add that there's only 2 of the 11 books that are wrong. All the rest of them fall into place beautifully. They do the characters are the same, the writing flows. This one is out of place, and it might also be because this is the first one. This one is the very first one that came out, and it is written by a Star Trek author who's more sci-fi, science fiction, adult material than teen. Because when you read this, you're going to be like, this is a teen book? Because I took a step back from that too. The words are really big. I stumbled a lot. And even really good readers, I don't know how any teen would know some of these words. I was like, what?
I love reading. I really do. And I remember when we first started reading this book out loud last year, like, me and the other readers were like, what? What is that word? Like, we can't even pronounce it. I have to Google this. I don't know what it means.
There are also a ton of run-on sentences. There are sentences that take up a whole page. Like, it just keeps going. He has a lot of details. And details are great. Don't get me wrong. Because it sets what we're looking at. it sets the whole atmosphere because we are not at the crash down here. We are at a cave. We are somewhere outside of Roswell. So the details are good, the feelings are good, but the way that he presented him was very difficult, I think. And it was very difficult to figure out how this all flowed together with the story in a way. Like, there's really good things about it and really bad things. And the things we just mentioned before are the problems that I have with it. Everything else about the story, I think it's a good story.
It is a great story. So for those people who don't want to read or they don't mind being spoiled, what's the main plot of this book? We know it picks up 2 years after the pilot, and the book does start off slow and then picks up with action a few chapters in. But overall, what's the main plot of the book for those who don't want to necessarily maybe read or listen to the book readings?
I would say for people who want to read this book or even don't, I would recommend just watching the pilot, just the first few seconds when Liz gets shot. And instead of watching her and Max, which I know is hard to do, look in the background and watch the two men sitting at the table. Watch how Maria approaches them with the coffee and they shrug her off, no, go away. And then they go into their spiel and they do their thing. And then all of a sudden they start fighting and they get up and they turn around and there's a gun and they're screaming and shots are fired. And watch all the details. Look at how he looks. Look at his bald head, the way he's angry, how he flies out of there, all those things. And then I would pick up this book and read it because we're going to learn all about that man that shot Liz. So basically, this is a book about the person who shot Liz Parker that day. And this is a story about our beloved characters needing a vacation after all the craziness that's happened the last 2 years. And they decide to go to Carlsbad Caverns. Excuse me. That's an actual cave. It's about 2 hours south on
285 south?
Yep, 85 south of Roswell. And you can go there. And actually, I will say that the author did really well with the description of the caves and the places that they go in the caves because those are actual places you can go. You can find those different structures. You can go in the big room. You can take a bat tour. You can do all those things. There is a giant elevator that goes down to the big room. All those things are right. They're correct. And you can go to this day, go visit it yourself. So that's really cool.
Yeah, it's about 2 hours south of Roswell.
So the story takes place in the caves down there. So the kids decide they want to take a vacation. They need a break, and they take a weekend and they drive down to the caves. And while at the caves, Liz decides she wants to go into the gift shop, and long and behold, the gunman for the guy who shot her 2 years ago is in the gift shop, and she freaks. And when I mean freaks, I mean freaks out. And she comes running out to find the rest of them. And Max is like, what is wrong? And she tells him that he's in the gift shop. And she's like, are you sure? Are you sure? Sure enough, it's him. So he's down there meeting another man named Ramirez who works for the military because he is selling off alien artifacts. And he was in Roswell that day because, guess what? He was getting more relics to sell. And he was angry that the guy that he was selling to or was not giving him his money. And that's how he got angry enough to shoot Liz. So that's how that started. So basically, Liz is terrified, Max is angry, and Max wants to go after him and put a stop to him. And because he said, how could he get away with this? Well, remember, there was no report ever written because they didn't want them to know that Liz was shot or healed. So, of course he got away with it because nobody knew that somebody was technically murdered that day. So basically, this whole story is the teens following this guy around, trying to figure out what he's up to and trying to stop him. And it ends up that one of the students from the cruises that Max saw when he went up to make those bones age differently. Remember in the episode Skin and Bones in season two, episode 1, when he went up there, that one of those students, those grad students, is actually working with the guy whose name is Joe Morton, and he is helping to authenticate alien artifacts for him in a hotel room so that they can sell them, I guess, on the black market. And so they chase him around. They figure that out, and then Joe Morton figures out who Liz is, and it just becomes a whole murderous game of people dying and Liz getting kidnapped, and it's crazy. It's a lot. It's a lot of action.
The book does start off kind of slow, and you're like, okay, is this going anywhere? And then once Liz spots Morton at the gift shop, it really starts taking off from there.
Yeah. They think that Liz has PTSD, and she's reminiscing what happened to her in the crash down, and it's like vivid dreams constantly. And to the point where she even gets her handprint back. Like, it comes back, like, it's glowing, and it's there for a very long time, and it does not go away until Morton goes away. But it's a very action-packed book, and basically, they just want to stop the bad guy before he kills them or kills Liz. By the way, fun fact for all you Roswell High people, all our characters go to the Carlsbad Caverns in the Roswell High books as well. They're there a lot. So not only does our books, my favorite books, have it, but so do they. So it's in both Roswell series books, which is kind of interesting. I thought that was an interesting fun fact.
Well, when I read this book, Loose Ends, I noticed Max and Liz were acting a little bit out of character. Max wanted to kill Morton, the guy who shot Liz by accident, which is understandable. But he really wanted to beat him up, which is crazy because we don't really see that a lot on the show of Max wanting to beat people up. And then Liz having this PTSD and being terrified all the time. And that was a little uncharacteristic because we didn't really see her dealing with PTSD on the show. What do you think about that, Jess?
Well, I know that Michael also noticed that Max was acting weird. He had to stop him a couple times, and because he was literally going to go after them with guns blazing. He didn't care what happened to him. And we know that usually it's Michael who's the one that does that and not Max. And he even said that a few times. He said, "This is not like you. It's usually the other way around." So we know that Max and Liz are connected. When he saved her life that day, they have a very connected experience. And so it's kind of like her trauma is being fed into his anger, and it's just they are coincide together instead of it being one person. It's like two. It's kind of like it's some kind of force that has to do with that handprint. It's almost like forces bigger than them, bigger than Max and Liz, are at play here to stop this guy. Because not only is he a murderous, nasty villain, he's also stealing and selling precious alien artifacts. It's almost like their subconscious knows they have to stop this guy at any means. So while she's terrified, he's determined to stop her, and it's like this force that comes together to stop the bad guy. It's really hard to explain it. And what I do love about this book is that when you watch a TV show, you get to watch them do it. You can look at their facial features, how well Jason Bear does with his eyes. You can just see the love in his eyes. It's kind of like that kind of thing. Well, with this book, I don't have Jason's eyes to look at, but I can feel it in my soul. So I can feel how angry Max is, and I can feel how scared Liz is. because I get their emotions. I get those kind of feelings because I'm reading it in detail. And that is a different element of the book that you don't get on screen. And for things like this, for action packed, very emotional things, it's a winner. It's great. And that's another reason why I think these books are so important, because it gets you become the character. I can be Liz for a moment. I can be that scared, and I am feeling this, and I am seeing how much Max loves me, and I can feel that. And that may seem a little crazy, but it's the words that do it. It's the emotions, it's the feelings. So I think that's what they were trying to do with the emotions of our character, especially Max and Liz, because they're the main characters and they're so important. And it just shows you even more how much they love each other, how much they're bonded, how important Liz is to him, how much they need each other. If that makes sense to you.
That totally makes sense. And I really like the way that you explain that, Jess. And I think everyone listening will really get more of an understanding of the connection that Max and Liz have that's in this book. And we definitely learned so much more about her shooter in this book, which I actually really enjoyed, because after what happened in the pilot, we just see them run away. We don't see them again. We never hear from them again. They're never caught because we had to keep it secret that Liz was shot and then saved by Max.
Right, and I thought it was brilliant, actually, for them to take minute people, in a way, evil bad guys, which, by the way, just so you know, the two people in the diner, Morton and the other guy, which I don't ever know his name, he doesn't ever say, if you look at him, you will see he's got a biker jacket on. And in the book, Isabelle does a dreamwalk, and first thing she sees is what happens right after the crash down. They run out, they're in a back alley, and he's screaming at that guy, and he's calling that biker guy, you bad words that, well, the bad words aren't really in that book. It's a teen book, but he does say hell a lot. And I think he calls him a dumbass or something, too.
There are some cuss words in the book.
Yeah, there's a few.
There's not a whole lot, but they occasionally you'll see some cuss words pop up.
And he says, I'll show you, dumbass biker. And he shoots him and he kills him. So next time you watch the pilot, know that dude ends up dead in an alley after all that. Which is interesting. We would have never known that if it wasn't for these books. So that just tells you how evil this guy is. So poor Isabelle is stuck in this guy's head trying to get information. That's the first thing she sees. Poor thing. She's terrified. She's just terrified. I don't blame her. I don't blame her at all.
Right. She has to dreamwalk him a lot in this book to get details on his plan and who he's associated with and why he has these alien artifacts and why he even was there at the crash down that day, and gets all this inside information, and it's really terrifying for Isabelle, and I do feel for her in this book. Because
not only that, she gets really sexualized, by the way, because his little associate that's selling artifacts thinks that she's the hot pepper and is dreaming about her in bed.
That's right.
He is just like, I want a little piece of that, and it's really creepy. And he talks about his age. He's 35, and she's 18, which, age is a number, but, creepy. It's creepy.
That's true. They do kind of sexualize Isabelle in this book, but she is used for eye candy, I would say, for sure, in the books and on the show. And they use her a lot as a diversion or a distraction for whoever they're.
Well, she did it. If you remember correctly, she walked up to him first so she could get information. So she uses her sexuality to get it from her.
She does.
Because she knows it's going to happen. And that's fine. And all power to Isabelle. Use that thing, girl. Use that thing. If I had that thing, I'd be using it And I don't have a problem with that. It's the problem I have is his nasty, lusting eyes. Like, even when he's dying, he's thinking about how much he wishes he could have a piece. Like, dude, no, he's he's the creepo, not her. No, definitely, girl, use that thing.
Isabelle Evans giving men boners everywhere. She does, right?
I've never heard you say boner. I wasn't expecting that. Giving him a hot sauce boner.
So Isabelle and Michael also dress up as military people in this book, and they like artificially manufacture fake artifacts, fake alien artifacts, to get more info on Morden, which I thought was also really, really interesting to see that go down.
That guy, he takes his gun out in the middle of a Denny's. Like, hope you like your waffles. Stick them up. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, he meets them. He thinks that they're on to him. That Ramirez set him up, and he says, "Meet me over at the Denny's," and they do it to try to get them out of the hotel room because Max and Liz sneak in there to try to find out more information on what he has in the briefcase because they really don't know what's going on. Max and Liz are sneaking into the hotel room trying to get caught, so they're the diversion. And they make fake artifacts out of like wire hangers and sheets, and they use their powers to change it to make it look like it's a alien test pilot helmet or something. And and he's like, "Oh, wow, this is awesome. These are great things." And then he's like, "But I'm taking them." So he like steals them, not knowing that they're really junk. He has no idea. And he doesn't just steal them. He gets up, he jumps up, and throws a gun in their face in broad daylight. And which also too, I want to also mention that they use their powers a lot in the daytime in this book, which is a no-no, because a few times while they're like chasing after Morton when he kidnaps Liz, they're changing the color of their car constantly. They're changing it like in the middle of the day, and Max gets mad at Michael at one point because Michael says, "You're acting weird," and he says, "No, I'm not." And he blasts them in a parking lot in daytime in front of an old couple, and he says, "Oh, I just fell." Sure, Michael. So
They were very careful about doing that on the show.
right. So that's another reason why I call this my problem child book, because it's things like that's not what our characters do.
I can understand at the end why they had to do it, though, because there's this huge showdown at the end of the book. For those of you who don't want to read it or just want, our cliff notes, is huge showdown with Morden and Max, because Morden has kidnapped Liz and is basically like threatening to kill her, I think, right? At this point in the book, from what I remember. And it's really scary, and Max and Liz have this connection where Max can sense where Liz is because they have such a cosmic connection that he can tell how close he is to her and how close he's getting to her in the caves. And so he does find her, and they have the showdown with Max and Morton, and there's a lot of shooting, there's a lot of blood, there's a lot of really crazy stuff that happens. But
the guy from Las Cruces gets killed first. Morton just shoots him and leaves him on the side of the road, keeps driving after he kidnaps Liz. And he takes Liz to another cave in the middle of nowhere that's not supposed to be for the public. And he thinks that Liz is an alien because she tries to convince him of that. And she's like, "What?" He says, "What's your name?" She said she thought of the scariest name she could think of. And she says, "My name is Tess." And I literally laughed out loud when I read that. And then she says, well, you're a hussy alien, Tess, and she convinces him somehow because he's got her tied to untie her so she can try to use her powers to use those fake artifacts that he stole from Michael and Isabelle. And when he does that, she takes off running into the caverns, and she gets lost. And the only thing she has to light her way is the handprint on her stomach. So she's using her handprint, the glowing handprint, as a flashlight.
And I remember, I think Liz eventually let Morton think that she did have alien powers or she was an alien, just because it protected her more.
Right. Max gets to the cave, which they find out where the cave is because Isabelle dreamwalks Ramirez as he's dying. Because Morton shot Ramirez when he got to the cave, so he's dying. And
right, and Ramirez is one of Morton's associates.
Right, and that's the one who sexualized Isabelle. And he tells her where he is, and so they get there, and Max immediately runs in the cave after Liz because he can sense her, and he's trying to find her, and he knows where she is, like you were talking about with his senses. And so she's lost in this cave. She's trying to figure it out, and she goes all the way, and then she hits a dead end. And she turns around, and there's Morton, and all you can see is this angry, bald-headed man. Like, I'm going to get you, I'm going to kill you, Tess. And she says, my name is not Tess, my name is Liz Parker, and I'm not going to let you control me anymore. And he said, we'll see about that. And Max shows up at the very, comes there, and she said, Max, you found me. And he slips, and he falls to his demise in the bottom of a canyon. He's gone. And as soon as he's gone, her handprint fades away, Max's anger goes away, her fear goes away. It's like she's back to normal again.
I have to say, though, in those final moments of that book, and even leading up to the whole thing where she gets kidnapped, Liz has some pretty badass moves in the end of the book, and I'm really proud of her for being brave and, like, fighting her way through this crazy mess with this guy, because this Morton guy is, like, completely wackadoodle out of his mind.
Right.
Nutty guy.
Yeah, and it kind of sucks that they never, like they don't mention the book things that happen in our story, like in the show. And I'm sure they do that for a reason. Like I said, probably because of writing. But it would be great is like, if she would mention that kind of stuff, or if it was tied in that way. I know why they don't do that, and that's fine, but I thought so too. Like, it worried me at first that she was so different than the strong, independent, Liz Parker that we all know. And then I realized that it had everything to do with whatever this force was that was compelling Max and Liz to get rid of this guy because of everything that he was doing in the world. Because, the main goal of Max and Liz is to do good in the world. Stay under the radar, and like even at the end of graduation, what do they want to do? They want to help people. And
right, they want to use their alien powers for good.
Right. They want to use it for good. And I mean, I'm not saying that him dying was using it for good, but he was an evil guy. I mean, he kind of had it coming, if you really think about it. And I just thought it was great that she was like, no, this is who I am. You're not going to control me anymore. I'm done with this. And then, and of course, it never happened because Valenti, when they get back to Roswell, Valenti says that when they found his body in the cave, that they said it was because of drugs, because the U.S. military doesn't want, the artifacts to be missing because they're not real, right? In the military's mind. I mean, in 2021 they probably do, but we're talking about 2000. That's before,
I still feel like it's similar to today, where the government is trying to cover up the fact that UFOs and alien life.
And I know they just released all those test pilot videos the other day. So I wouldn't put it past them now. It's a whole different ballgame now.
Well, that's good. Maybe they will finally admit that aliens exist, UFOs do really exist. This is a real thing. I do definitely think there's a possibility for extraterrestrial life on this planet. So,
Yep.
overall thoughts on this book. Don't skip it. There is some timeline issues and some continuity issues we have with the book, but overall, we both really like the book. We think it's a great premise. We get to find out more background story about Liz's shooter, Morden, and where he comes from.
Yeah, I like the passion in it, like we were talking about before. I like the connection with Max and Liz because, I'm a dreamer anyway. But so the more we get of that, the happier I am. I do also like that they're together in this book because, I always like it when they're together. And and Alex is still there, which is great. And we get Alex humor and we got Alex love and we have all that. And this is before Kyle became a real big part of their group too. He's not there. So
Oh, that's right. He isn't there.
no, he's not have much to do with it. So that's another key point I didn't see. But anyway, so I mean, I would place it um right after summer of 47. I would place it right there because the end of the world, after that happens, we all know that they're not together and Max is heartbroken and there's no way, even though he loves her no matter what, and even though he's angry, there's no way that they would act like they were together after the end of the world.
So we consider that one line about future Max, or Max mentioning Kyle and Liz together, just kind of a slip up in a little author mistake.
So it's on page 246, that little line that says, the way I felt, the way that, well, Isabelle actually says it, the way that Max felt after he thought that Liz cheated on her with Kyle. Unless that's from somewhere else. If that happened in a different time, somebody please tell me, because then I'll use that. Because then I'll definitely know it goes there. Because I can't think of any other time where that happened. I've been racking my brain because for me, I like to have the timeline. I want to be able to read these with the show so that it has a cohesive order. That's what I want. I want the whole Roswell story. So for me to be able to fit the books in the show the proper way is very important. So that's why my problem childs are my problem childs and why they stick out to me, because when that happens, it drives me insane. The rest of them, beautiful. Don't have to worry about it. Those two, this in quarantine, that one line throws me off.
Yeah, and both instances have to do with a mention of the future Max stuff. Basically, that's why it throws it off. But other than that, it's good. But yeah, I would agree with this book falling right after Summer of 47 and before End of the World, in between those two episodes.
I have to say they did get some good details right. I will give them that. I'll give them some credit. They do mention things that are important. They mention the skins and Whitaker. They mention like Valenti's helping them. So we know they specifically say this happens 2 years after the shooting. So we know it's season 2. We know. It's just making sure it falls right so that the characters act correctly. That's the problem. That stupid damn line.
So, Jess, is there any episodes you recommend watching before people go on to read the next books?
When I was doing research for this, I went back and I listened again to our book party YouTube channel while I was working. So because I love to read, but sometimes when you're busy, you can do that. That's what I love about it. You just put your headphones on and you can listen while you're doing other things. I listened to that and I listened to some of the things I had said before, and I went and looked at season 2, and I rewatched episode 1 of season 2, Skin and Bones, because they talk about the scientists in there, and I wanted to try to find them, and I found them. If you look close enough, you'll see the one Asian guy. That's him. And then you can watch Summer 47 because they talk about that with the older man that Michael meets, because they talk about the artifacts and a little bit about the pods that he saved. So you know it's after that too. And then of course the pilot. Watch that again and watch the details. Look at the guys at the table this time.
I think Maria described them as Beavis and Butthead, which I really love that description, because I used to watch Beavis and Butthead as a kid and my parents hated me for it, but I loved it.
But it's really funny because they're like older men and there's no way they were Beavis and Butthead.
But like an older, like, I don't know if you would say it dumber, maybe smarter Beavis and Butthead.
No, it's like an old balding guy with gray hair and flannel shirt, old redneck. And
I still remember that line of like Maria describing the two men to Valenti, like, oh, it was
funny.
like that.
It's a good line.
That wraps it up for Loose End. In our next podcast, we will be talking about No Good Deed, and then it will be Little Green Men after that. For the next 2 books in the series, they're basically interchangeable. Doesn't matter too much which one you read first, right, Jess?
Yes, but make sure you watch. If you're going to watch the Christmas episode, Roswell Christmas Carol, which is episode 10. And also, I would just keep going, because you're going to need How the Other Half Lives, and you're going to need Disturbing Behavior as well. Because the next ones are full of, well, the No Good Deeds is full of the Christmas Miracle. It's all about that, when Max heals those kids. And then the one after that with Lawyer Dupree is all about those stones, the crystals that they find. So you need that, because if you don't, you're going to be confused. All about that.
Yeah, there's more backstory about the weird alien crystals that are definitely more fleshed out in the book than it was executed on the show. So I remember talking about this with Leonard, and it's just not... Those storylines were not exactly executed that well on the show, and we get more information about all of that in the books.
I think that's why these books exist, because I think maybe it may be harder episodes for them to make. I mean, for instance, could you imagine trying to turn everybody green? You know how much that would have cost? Especially it would have been a tremendous, like, I can see them as being mini episodes, but instead of it's just the same thing, only instead of watching them, I'm reading them. But I think sometimes some of these storylines, I think, like I keep telling people, the reason that these books are very important is so that you understand the stories that we didn't get enough information about. So the crystals, and the healing of the kids, and the dupes, especially 1,000 times the dupes. Because I was like all of you, what is this about? Like, this doesn't make sense. They come, they go, to disappear. But the books don't, they tell you their story. You know why they're there. You know where why they're in New York, why they turned out that way. And then you get what happens next with them. Because guess what? They end up in after graduation books. And they end up there. So then you get them some more. So it's very important. It's very important for the story and to understand, to read these books, which is why I'm very passionate, very adamant about them. And that's why that this podcast even exists, because I want people to understand the whole story of Roswell like I do. It's even better when you get more detail. At least I think so.
Exactly. I like that we get more detail. I like that we have these extra episodes, so to speak, that are in book form, because there's some things I was not exactly clear about that I learn more about in the books. And we get more Alex, which I enjoy because Alex is one of my favorite characters.
Yes, and you get more Kyle, too. Way more Kyle, especially after graduation.
And more Kyle and Isabelle, even though it may not be in the way that you guys want. I know a lot of people ship Kyle and Isabelle together, but we do get more of them in the books. Maybe not romantically, but, their friendship grows and it deepens, and we find out more about how Kyle's powers are connected to Isabelle, and it's really great reading that in the books.
There's a lot of good stuff coming up, guys. A lot. So the more we get into these, the more we go. When we go closer to the after graduation books, there's just so much to talk about. So much. And those are my favorite because they're just so good. There's no other way to say it. They're just so good. They line up so well with our characters and the way the characters act. And I mean, you guys you got done reading New Beginnings not that long ago, wouldn't you say? That's how it feels.
Yeah, we're reading Pursuit right now. We're still in the middle of basically in the beginning of reading Pursuit, and
that's really good too.
It's very action packed, and it feels very much like something I could picture happening if we had gotten another season of Roswell. Even if we had just gotten like a Roswell movie, I would picture seeing this happen. It's very easy to picture in my head.
I think that they're so good. These books were written so good, and we don't need another season. I think that if we ever get our movie, I really want them to take place after the books. I've said that so many times to Jason. He's probably tired of me hearing it, of me saying it to him, because I told him as soon as he reads those books, he better tell me how he likes them, and he promised me he would. So I'm waiting for that day when Mr. Bear decides he's going to read them and tell me exactly how he feels about them, because I want to know if he felt the same way I do, because I think that the books portrayed Max very well, and they did, and that's important to me. They portrayed all of them very well, but I want to know his thoughts, because one day we get that movie, I want him to say, these books are so great that we need to do it after them, just like I think. That would be my dream.
Whoever's in charge of the movies, writing the movie, needs to know, and I hope it's Jason. I would assume they're going to have Jason Katniss involved somehow.
Well, he said he wants his next big dream. If you've seen the magazine that just came out, it has an article, and his next big dream is to direct. Well, I got a movie for you. That would be fantastic. Could you imagine if him and Sherry got together and direct this movie? It would be fantastic. I know that B&T is next. I get it. And I am 100% supportive of B&T. Don't get me wrong. That's going to happen too. But I still want my movie. I still want it. We deserve it. They look so fab. I mean, I want them with their children. I want to see that happen. I have my own script already written.
I agree, and I think if we can crowdfund B&T the way we have as fans, we can definitely crowdfund.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not going to take any of the limelight away from B&T. Let them be a couple seasons in. Let them do their thing too. But I guarantee if you said to them, hey, you want to do this too? I bet you they'd do it. I would hope that they would. I know that even Emily said she would come back. And a lot of them have said, yeah, I'd do it. So, you hear that, Fox? You're listening? Everybody wants one. Even the stars. You better get on that shit.
Get on that.
Yeah. Well, I can't, we can't get our episodes with the music that we love. So what do we have left? We have to do it our damn selves.
Absolutely, Jess. Hopefully one day we can crowdfund a Roswell movie if it happens. We have come to the end of our episode. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And until next time, everybody, remember to read the bleeping books. All opinions stated in this podcast are fan opinions only. We do not own the rights to the books. They were published through Simon & Schuster. Fox owns the rights to the books. We do not personally know anyone who helped produce the TV show Roswell or the authors who wrote the Roswell books. We suggest you subscribe to the Roswell Book Party channel on YouTube. They have all the books posted in audio form through the end of A New Beginning and will post the rest of the series as soon as possible. Thank you for listening to 2 Aliens and 11 Roswell Books podcast.